Hello everyone, welcome to the Data Scrub. In this video, we will walk through a data analytic project from start to finish using mock invoice sales data of a winter gear store I had created. This video is for you if you're new to data analytics or trying to learn Excel. I will walk you through my thought process when I first approach a new data set, how to combine the data, and how to clean the data, and finally make a simple pivot table using the dataset. You're more than welcome to follow along. I will include all the resources down below. If you've ever opened a dataset and thought, I don't even know where to start, this video is for you. One of my biggest struggles as a beginner data analyst was not knowing what to do with the data I was given. So in this video, I will walk you through my thought process for approaching a dataset from the start. For the first part of this video, I'm going to walk you through how I approach invoice sales data when important information is split across multiple sheets or tabs. Right here in front of us, we have mock invoice sales data that I created. And we are right now currently looking at invoice 1. I'm going to give you a moment to observe the data. Feel free to pause the video and take as much time as you need to digest the data. So invoice 1 has more transactional level information, but notice it still doesn't have item name or categories. I see item ID and I see transaction status, but I don't know what was sold or whether the transaction was successful because transaction status is in numbers. This is very common in real world example, real world data. Important details are often stored in separate tables. So now let's take a look at invoice 2. I noticed the same thing. All the columns are named the same, but there's only item ID and transaction status in numbers. There's no actual items or actual transaction status. Now let's take a look at the other tabs. I have status, and in status, I have transaction status and the status description. And then I have items, item IDs, and item descriptions. So at this point, I'm asking one question: what fields can connect these tables? So I noticed that transaction status and item IDs appear in multiple sheets. That tells me that I can join these tables using that field. I also see in items tab the item description, which suggests I can eventually connect invoice table to item level information. So before I touch Excel tools, I already know my goal. I want one clean table where each rows represent a transaction with an item details and transaction status. And overall, invoice 1 and invoice 2 uses the same column structure. So combining them will make sense. And I also noticed the invoice ID are not uniform, so we will need to clean them up. For the second part of this video, we will combine invoice 1 and invoice 2, clean the data, and make their formats consistent. Before doing that, I recommend making a copy of the raw data and working from that copy, which is a best practice to avoid altering the original dataset. I have saved a copy of the raw data and will be working from that version. This way, if I make a mistake, I can always go back to the original data. Now let's combine invoice 1 and invoice 2. I have double checked that the column structures are the same, so I will copy and paste both data set into a new sheet. Let's create a new sheet. Copy invoice 1, paste. I'm going to name this invoice, and I will give this a different tab color than the other raw data tab, so I know that I'm working off of this sheet. And then now I'm going to paste invoice 2. Make sure you don't paste the header. You don't copy the header from invoice 2 and paste it in the new sheet, because we had already grabbed it from invoice 1, so we don't need them again. Then at this stage, I expect to see some duplicates. That's completely normal. Let's start by removing the duplicate first. So select the entire sheet, go to Data tab, click on the Remove Duplicates. Make sure you select my data has header. Press OK. And as you can see, 25 duplicates values were found and removed. Press OK. Now let's clean up the customer ID column right here. I noticed there are some extra spaces in some of the values. To fix this, I will insert a new column next to column A and use trim function to remove any leading or trailing spaces. So type in equal trim. The trim function helps eliminate unwanted spaces in the cell. So let's select A2, which is what I want to get rid of, the spaces in A2. And then I'll do close parentheses, enter. I will drag the formula down to apply to the entire column. On the right-hand corner of that cell, there is a square green box. Just double click that. And then I will give this a name, customer_ID. Now I'm going to select entire column B, copy it, and paste it as values. These 1, 2, 3 under the paste option is paste as values because I don't want the function anymore when I click onto the cell. And then I'll delete column A because I don't need that anymore. Now that we're done with customer ID, let's work on invoice ID. I see some of the invoice IDs contain dashes, so I would use the substitute function to remove dashes. Same thing here, I will insert a new column and I will type in equal substitute. The substitute function in Excel is used to replace specific text within a cell with the new text. It's especially useful for cleaning data when you want to remove or change certain characters without affecting the rest of the data. So the syntax for substitute is substitutes, open parentheses, the cell that you want to work on, the old text, and the new text. So I want to work on B2 and I want to remove the dashes in B2. So I'll type in comma. The old text that I want to remove will be a dash, so I'll put it in between double quotation, comma. I want to replace it with nothing, so I'll just do double quotation, close parentheses, enter. And then same thing, I want this applied to all of column C. Rename it invoice_ID. Copy column C, paste it in back as a value, and remove column B because I don't need that anymore. And now we can format the price column. I noticed that the decimal places in price column aren't consistent because you can see here this is two places and this is one place. So I will format column E as accounting. Since these values are represented as price, the accounting format will make it cleaner and more uniform. So to do that, I'll select column E, go to Home, and under go to General, and right next to General there is a drop down arrow, and I'm going to select Accounting. And now you can see the decimal places are uniform and all of these are in actual prices. Now that we've done cleaning the data, let's move on to the next part of this video. We will populate the transaction status and item names so we can see the full picture in one sheet. And to do this, we will be using VLOOKUP to fill in the missing column. If you like a refresher on VLOOKUP, I also have a separate video on a simple VLOOKUP that you can check out on my channel. Now let's start by populating item names in this spreadsheet. So I want the item names to be in between C and D, so I'm going to insert a new column. And I will use VLOOKUP to populate the item name. So I'll give this column item name and type in equal VLOOKUP. If you need a refresher, VLOOKUP syntax is the lookup value, table array, column index number, and the range lookup. So I have VLOOKUP. I want to look up item ID 8 in C2, so click on C2, comma, the table array is in the items tab, select A and B, comma, I want to populate B, and since A is in the placement of 1 and B is in the placement of 2, I want my output to be B, so I'm going to type in 2, comma. Now here you could do true or false or 1 and 2. 0 is an exact match or false. So I'll use 0, close parentheses, enter. And as you can see, item ID represent unisex ski bindings. And if you want to double check, you can go back to items. And here we have it, unisex ski binding. And same thing with this spreadsheet, I want the formula to be dragged down all the way to the bottom. And now you can see the item name have been populated using the item ID. And I don't want to leave VLOOKUP syntax in here. I want the actual values, so I'm going to copy and paste it back in as values. And then now for the transaction status, same thing. Action, I'm going to give it a name, description. And I will also use VLOOKUP for this to populate the data. I want to look up the transaction status 3, which is in I2. Click on I2, comma, go to status, select A and B, comma. I want to populate the status description, so I'm going to type in 2. Same thing here, I want exact match, so I'll do 0, close parentheses, enter. So transaction status 3 means it's pending. If you go back, you could see it's pending. And I want this formula to be applied for all of column J. And I'm going to copy and paste it back in as values. And there we have it. We have the item name populated and transaction descriptions populated in our sheet, and we have invoice 1 and invoice 2 combined. The data is also consistent and clean. The next step, we're going to do a pivot table off of this invoice tab. All right, so for this part of the video, we're going to create a simple pivot table to see which stores are generating the most revenue. You can skip this step I'm about to do before we make a pivot table, but I like to make my row level data into a table first. So I will select everything in Invoice tab, and then I will go to Insert, go to Table, press OK, but make sure you have My Table has Header selected. And under the table design, you can change the table style, pick the color that you like right here. I'm going to leave it at this default one. And now we're ready to make the pivot table. So I will go to Insert, I will go to Pivot Table, select from Table/Range, and then I will right here, this is where you will select where your pivot table to be placed. You can either do a new worksheet if you prefer it that way. I like to do existing worksheet because I like to refer back to the actual row level data when I am creating the pivot table. So all I have to do is slide right or left just to look back at my row level data. And now I'm going to pick where I want it to be placed. So I'll just select M4 and then go ahead and press OK. And for the row, I will drag the store location into rows. And here you can see all of the stores. And I'll go ahead and rename this store location. So store location. Next, in the value area, I will add the price. So drag the price, click out of it, drag the price into values. And by default, Excel sum the value so we get the total revenue per store. So I'm going to rename this to total revenue. Total revenue. Next, I want to see each store contribution as percentage of total sales. So to do that, I will click, I'll go ahead and drag price under the values again. And then I will go to that column, right click, go to show value as, and then pick percent of grand total. Now we can see not only the total revenue, but also the proportion each store contributes to the overall revenue as percentage. And now I'm going to rename this percent of total revenue. Of total revenue. And to focus only on the completed transaction, I'm gonna go ahead and drag the transaction description into the filter and filter it by completed only. Press OK, and then rename the transaction description to transaction status. And then I will also add the item name to the filter area so we can optionally view revenue by specific product. So I'll go ahead and grab item name, drag it here. And here I'm going to rename it without the underscore. And if you want to, let's say, look at the pivot table only by women's ski boot, you can just click on women's ski boot and press OK. And these are the total revenue for completed sales for all the women's ski boot by location. And that's it. With this pivot table, we can quickly see which stores are generating the most revenue and even filter by transaction status or item. It's simple, but it's also very powerful to summarize our data into a pivot table in just a few clicks. If this video felt um, slow or basic, that's intentional. I wanted to take the time to walk through each step clearly so it's easy to follow along. When I first started learning data analysis, I often felt really overwhelmed, especially because I have a non technical background and I felt unsure of where to begin. So, my goal with this channel is to be helpful um, for people who are self taught, beginners, or who are interested in data analytics or trying to pivot into data analytic role or any data role. So if you're learning on your own sometime, if you feel stuck or confused, just know you're not alone and you're exactly who this content is for. I hope this video was helpful and fun to follow along. Thank you very much for watching.